My name is Thomas, and I'm from Wales in the UK, and I recited my Shahada in October 2022. While I was living in Kuwait, that's the first time that I was very seriously investigating Islam. I'd always looked into it for a long time, but that was my first attempt at looking into the practical aspects. The main turning point for me was during my first Ramadan in living in a Muslim country. I did what a lot of teachers try to do, which is to give it a go just to see what the students go through. However, I try to do it properly, so a lot of teachers will maybe just try 1 or 2 days just to see as a personal challenge, but I wanted to try and do the whole thing, so from the second day I started doing the full fast, including the water, even though that did scare me a bit at first. And I also looked into the meaning behind Ramadan. So I was, wondering, why do you do this? Not just the physical act, but how does it draw you closer to God? That it's also the month of the Quran. And by this point, I was fortunate enough that I did actually have an English language translation of the Quran in my accommodation. I was involved in an organization called the Aware Center, which is a bit like Discover Islam here in Bahrain, except there was a lot of cultural elements. So it's about just expats relating to locals, people from all over the world. I mainly went there for the book club, but I did go to one talk they had on Islam because it was something I was already interested in. And a friend of mine now, Iskander, he gifted me my first English language copy of the Quran with Arabic side by side. And for a while it was just living in my bookshelf, carefully protected. But during the Ramadan, when I was looking into, it's all about the Quran, not just the physical challenge of fasting. So I found myself, fasting, reading the Quran every day. I even went out and got a prayer mat just from the local budget store, and I looked up how to pray. I reached a point where I felt like I can't really self-teach much anymore. I really need to see how it's done, maybe speak to practicing Muslims. I was on the verge of reaching out to Iskander, and I had a very big setback for me. It was a road traffic accident where I literally got run over by a bus. Even though in the moment, in the shock, I didn't feel the pain right there and then, I can still vividly picture the back wheel of the bus driving over my legs. Alhamdulillah, I made a good recovery, and it could have been a whole lot worse. But during that time, it was quite a dark moment for me, especially in terms of my journey to Islam. The thoughts going through my head were things like, well, why would a benevolent creator put a literal bus in my path just as I'm trying to get closer to him? It was very hard to, rationalize. But at the same time, there was still, you still have that innate leaning. I still had, occasionally, I was overthinking with thoughts such as, well, if I recover and I wanted to become a Muslim, would I be able to kneel properly to pray? So it's only on reflection now that I can see that I didn't completely lose the spark of faith that I'd been working towards. But in the moment it did feel very dark. Coming out of that's when I really seriously started thinking that I will become a Muslim. The main shift for me, I think, was that while I was making my recovery over the summer from teaching back home in Wales, every single small bit of progress, I can bend my knee to this level, or I can do this and it doesn't hurt so much anymore, or I'm starting to get some sensation back. You're so grateful for each tiny step that you lose the bitterness. You don't think you don't question it so much anymore. You're just so grateful that you ever had the blessing of your legs and you're getting a second chance. And it really gives you a sense of urgency, because that was my second chance. I spent decades reading about Islam, studying about Islam. I even looked into the practical details. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And, I really even felt like it was the truth, but I just hadn't got to the stage where I was ready to submit yet. And I was given a second chance, and I could have easily, if I'd landed differently under that bus, I could have died never having become a Muslim. And it was that thought that made me realize, look, you might not have another 10 years to research. If you feel like this is the truth, just do it now. So I reached out to Iskander, and they have the same mentality. I gave him a little text. He immediately phoned me. He questioned me only a little bit, and then he said that it sounds like you believe that there's no God but God. Do you believe that Muhammad is his messenger? And when I said yes to that, he was like, well, it sounds like you're ready to recite Shahada, and we don't normally want to delay these things. And that was exactly the place I was in. I was thinking, I don't really want to delay it. So that very day, he took me to the masjid. The imam found out. I recited my Shahada in front of everyone. And later on that day, I was invited to a diwaniyah held by a very good man connected with the Aware Center. And I met a whole host of my first ever brothers in Islam that are still some of my closest friends, and almost like family right to this day. There are so many changes and challenges, and a lot of them you can only sort of see in retrospect, but they're all for the best. And especially as a new Muslim from a very different culture, you start to become maybe increasingly uncomfortable with the forms in which you have to socialize with colleagues that would be my only social group. Before. I was working and living in Kuwait. There's a very small British community. Everyone I knew was a British teacher, and really a lot of their social life would revolve around things that were now completely separate to my values. If I went on holiday, I certainly wouldn't want to go on holiday just so I can go drink, for example. So I was always trying to balance that. I never wanted to cut anyone off or something, but occasionally you will find that when you want to stand by your new values, sometimes you'll just drift apart, and that can be a little bit difficult then. But we are very fortunate in that Islam is not a purely individualistic religion. It's never just about you becoming perfect. There's no concept of being a monk. It's always about how you relate to others, your family, your friends, your wider community, even other religions. So there were always people there to support me, and I've developed some of the closest, most meaningful, deep friendships of my life, all in the last year and a bit since I actually became a Muslim. Initially it can become a bit painful. You can feel a little bit isolated when certain people maybe just really don't want to invite you to things anymore because you're not as fun as you used to be. But anytime you have to give something up for the sake of Allah, you've got something much better in store. It's always for a good reason. I'm very blessed in terms of my family. Alhamdulillah, they've been accepting. At first, there was a bit of a shock. So after I did recite Shahada, my plan was, okay, I'm going to go home for the Christmas break, or the winter break, and I'll tell them face to face because it's big news. I want to be there. I want them to know it's earnest, nothing to worry about. And they started to get a bit suspicious because they asked what you want for Christmas. I said, well, not whiskey this year. And they said, oh, why? That's strange. And I said, well, I don't really drink alcohol anymore. And my mother said, oh, that's great. Your dad's giving up alcohol this month as well as a little health kick. And then another conversation came up because there was a dispute. My father wanted just traditional Christmas dinner with, well, we have chicken in our house rather than turkey. But my mother wanted chicken and some pork. So he was like, well, what do you think? Do you want some pork as well? And I said, I'm going to have a vegetarian Christmas if that's okay. There's certain things I don't eat anymore. I think it's just safest. And then my mother just stopped and she said, have you converted to Islam? Because your dad thinks you might have converted to Islam. And I had to tell them over the phone then. They asked me directly. I had no idea they saw it coming. But by the time you say, yeah, I don't eat certain meats anymore and I don't drink alcohol, they knew. And my mother was, in that call, shocked. I think as far as I remember, her exact words were, why would you do that? Why would you sign up for so many rules? You'll have to pray 63 million times a day. But fortunately, after that, alhamdulillah, she's been very welcoming, very accepting. So my father actually went to the nearest town, nearest big city, about a 40-minute drive, just to go to a halal butcher. And he made, I know it's going to sound like such a strange concept, but their way of showing they accepted me was that that whole debate about the meat, they were going to have chicken, and it was going to be from the halal butcher, so they could have halal Christmas dinner, which is, a beautiful thing in their own way. And yeah, ever since then, actually, we've become a lot more close in that way. It's a whole new area of conversation we can have, because when I was a teenager and I wasn't really following any religion, my mother didn't want to talk to me about spirituality or faith or anything, because I'm just going to be like, well, I don't believe in it, that's just superstition. Whereas she's really opened up to me about what she actually believes in, her inclinations, her opinions, and I have a platform to talk to her about my journey as well then. And it's really an extra way that I've been able to become close to my parents. Fortunately, naturally, I was aware of this sort of from the start on a more casual basis. I decided to keep my name Tomos because it's the first gift my parents ever gave me. I wanted to show that, I'm still the same person. Just because I've become a Muslim doesn't mean I have to, change culture or anything as well. I can still be Welsh. I can still be your son. I'm just a Muslim now, and hopefully that will make me better as a son, as a person, everything else. So it's the same person, just better. And I've tried my best not to be forcing anything, but I'm always open to discussion, and quite naturally they have questions, and I just talk to them earnestly from the heart, and they've been very open and curious. So inshallah they'll continue to ask questions, and I pray for them literally every prayer. So they help not just in religious terms, but also in social terms, moving country. Once again, you find yourself in a new place, new community. You have to build those connections, establish those things. My friend Iskander actually said you should get in touch with Zuhair from the Discover Islam. He's a good man. He's a good place to be involved with. So he's one of my first friends in Bahrain as well. Also, I had my Kuwaiti friends said, this is the contact number of someone in Bahrain, good Bahraini person to know, like kind and generous with you, good English, because unfortunately I haven't learned enough Arabic yet, just to make me feel welcome and things. So yeah, Discover Islam was one of the first contacts I had here, some of the first friends I made, and they had a good idea to every Thursday in the evening we'll have a fixed gathering. It started off fairly informal, just new Muslims will meet all together from all different cultures. we'll get to know each other, we'll talk to each other about what we're going through, what we're learning. Sometimes it's nice to learn from another learner because you're very comfortable to share how many mistakes you make, and you don't feel like you can be more active in the learning then. And that's carried on, and we've ended up attracting speakers because people hear that there are people trying to find out about Islam, and fortunately those that do have the knowledge have spent a lot of time studying. They're always willing to give up their time, and they never ask for anything in return. And they come along and talk about hadith. So sometimes we get very great speakers coming to teach us, and sometimes it's just a social gathering so we can get to know our brothers, and we just sit down and chat or play chess. Once an American brother bought a chessboard. I value it immensely because I think that's not just the ideal way for a society to live peacefully with each other, but I think it matches up with our values as Muslims as well. As I said, it's not just about you as an individual, what you're trying to do right. It's about how you interact with your family, community, religious community, and those outside your religious community. Naturally, we're going to have differences in language, culture, belief, but it's the correct way for us to do it and flourish as Muslims and as a society is to say that you can have your religion and I have my religion, and obviously we can be practicing Muslims and improve ourselves, but we need to learn to live comfortably with others. And the fact that in Bahrain I've met some people who are really, from my experience, genuine examples of embodying the values of Islam. They really love for their brother what they love for themselves. And they can do that side by side with Hindu temples and synagogues and churches. It's a beautiful, vibrant community. My suggestion for those who haven't yet accepted Islam or haven't yet taken the step of reciting Shahada is maybe the advice I would have given myself in the past, which is that you shouldn't think you've got all the time in the world. If you do find yourself in the point where you feel like Islam might be the truth, just know that anything you are currently dealing with, your struggles, your doubts, there are always going to be doubts and struggles. But once you've recited Shahada, as long as you believe in your heart that it is true, the ease that you get after that is immense, because not only will you have the tranquility that comes from prayer, you'll have the support of a community, a brotherhood. You'll never have to be alone in it again. All of these things will help you on your journey. Literally every single time you pray, you're asking to be kept on the straight path. You remind yourself of who you ask for help if you need it. So you will have an immense amount of guidance and strength and tranquility that will come once you take that first step. So you might at the moment be feeling like this is the end of the journey becoming a Muslim, but it's really only the beginning. And there are always going to be challenges, but it's much easier facing them as a Muslim.